I've always believed that the most profound changes in our lives don't arrive with the sound of a trumpet or the crash of a storm. They don't announce themselves with grand gestures or cinematic timing. Usually, they arrive in the middle of a Tuesday afternoon, wrapped in the scent of drying grass and the mundane rhythm of a ceiling fan clicking in a quiet room. Welcome back to the channel. I'm glad you're here with me tonight. Before we get into this story, if you find peace in these reflections, I'd be so grateful if you'd subscribe and join our community. It helps us keep these stories alive. And please, leave a comment letting me know which corner of the world you're listening from tonight. I truly enjoy reading where everyone is checking in from. For the longest time, I thought I understood the architecture of silence. I grew up in a house built on it. It wasn't a heavy or a mean silence. It was just a presence, like a piece of furniture that everyone had agreed not to move. My Uncle Silas, the man who stepped in to raise me after my parents were gone, was a man of few words and even fewer explanations. Silas was a carpenter by trade, a man whose hands were perpetually stained with the scent of cedar and walnut. He moved through the world with a deliberate, slow-motion grace, as if he was always measuring a joint or checking a level in his mind. In our house, we didn't have long dinners filled with laughter and debate. We had the sound of forks hitting ceramic and the steady ticking of the grandfather clock in the hallway. I was 22 that summer, a age where you feel like you're standing on the edge of a very high diving board, looking down at a pool you aren't sure has been filled yet. I'd finished my degree, moved back to our small town in the foothills of the mountains, and felt like a ghost haunting my own childhood. I was between things, which is just a polite way of saying I was lost. I remember that specific afternoon with a clarity that usually only accompanies trauma or deep joy. It was mid-July. The air was thick and syrupy, the kind of heat that makes the cicadas scream in the trees until the sound becomes a physical pressure against your ears. I was sitting on the back porch, staring at a job application on my laptop that I hadn't typed a single word into for 3 hours. The screen door creaked a long, high-pitched whine that I'd heard 10,000 times, and Silas walked out. He didn't say anything at first. He just leaned against the railing, looking out at the overgrown garden and the hills beyond. He was wearing his usual work shirt, sleeves rolled up to reveal forearms that looked like weathered oak. I watched him out of the corner of my eye. I felt that familiar prickle of guilt, the sense that I should be doing something more, being someone better. I felt like a disappointment that he was too polite to mention. To me, his silence had always been a scorecard, and I assumed I was losing. "Elena," he said. Just my name. His voice was low, raspy, like gravel being turned over. I looked up, bracing myself for a question about my plans or a suggestion that I help him in the shop. But he didn't look at me with judgment. He looked at me with a sort of tired, profound recognition. "Sit with me a bit," he said, gesturing to the heavy Adirondack chairs he'd built years ago. They were gray now, weathered by the seasons, but still as solid as the day he'd bolted them together. I closed my laptop and moved to the chair beside him. The wood was warm from the sun, and for a moment, the only sound was the distant hum of a neighbor's tractor. I felt a strange tension in my chest, a tightness that usually came when I was waiting for the other shoe to drop. I've spent a lot of my life thinking that if I didn't say the wrong thing, I was doing okay, Silas began. He didn't look at me. He kept his eyes on the horizon. "I thought if I kept the roof tight and the floorboards level, I was giving you everything you needed. I figured words were just extra. Decorations on a house that didn't need them." I didn't know what to say. I'd never heard him speak more than 2 sentences at a time about anything other than wood grain or the weather. I just nodded, my heart starting to thud against my ribs. "But I see you sitting out here," he continued, his voice softer now. "I see you looking at that screen like it's a map you can't read. And I realized I might have taught you the wrong thing. I might have taught you that being quiet is the same thing as being okay. And it's not, is it?" The question hung there, vibrating in the heat. I felt a lump form in my throat, thick and stubborn. I wanted to tell him I was fine. I wanted to give him the easy answer so he could go back to his workshop, and I could go back to my scrolling. But the look in his eyes, the vulnerability there, stopped me. "No," I whispered. "It's not." Silas sighed, a long sound that seemed to carry the weight of decades. I'm proud of you, Elena. Not because you finished school or because you're smart. I'm proud of the way you've kept going, even when the silence in this house felt like it was trying to swallow you whole. I'm proud of the person you are when no one is watching. It felt like someone had reached into my chest and loosened a knot I didn't even know was tied. We didn't hug. We didn't cry. We just sat there as the shadows of the oaks began to stretch across the lawn. But the air between us had changed. It wasn't a barrier anymore. It was a bridge. The days that followed that conversation didn't look different on the surface. Silas still woke up at 5:30. He still drank his coffee black while looking at the morning mist. I still spent my mornings looking for a path forward. But the weather inside the house had shifted. The pressure had dropped. I found myself lingering in the kitchen longer. I'd ask him about the projects he was working on, and instead of a one-word answer, he'd explain the difference between air-dried and kiln-dried wood. He started telling me stories about my mother's small things, like the way she used to hum when she was gardening, or how she could never remember where she left her glasses. Each story felt like a gift, a piece of a puzzle I'd been trying to solve in the dark. I realized that Silas hadn't been withholding these things to be cold. He had been guarding them because he didn't know how to let them out without breaking them. About a week later, we had to run into town to the hardware store. It was a Saturday morning, the town square bustling with people at the farmer's market. Usually, these trips were silent affairs. Silas would get what he needed, and we'd be home in 20 minutes. But this time, he drove the long way. He took the back roads that wound through the valley, where the old tobacco barns stood like crumbling monuments. He slowed down as we passed a small, whitewashed church with a lopsided steeple. "I almost married a girl in that church before I met your aunt," he said suddenly, his hands relaxed on the steering wheel. I looked at him in shock. "You did?" "Yeah," he smiled, a genuine rueful smile. "She wanted to move to the city. I wanted to stay here and build things. We were both right, and we were both wrong. I spent 6 months thinking my life was over when she left. But if she hadn't, I wouldn't have been here when you needed me." He looked over at me, his eyes crinkling at the corners. "Sometimes the things that feel like a dead end are just a turn in the road, Elena. Don't be so afraid of the turns." We spent 2 hours at the hardware store, not because he needed that much, but because he took the time to show me things. He showed me the weight of a good hammer, the way a well-made chisel feels in the hand. We talked to the owner about the local high school football team. It was the most ordinary morning, but to me, it felt like a revelation. I was seeing the man behind the craftsman. That evening, a storm rolled in. It started with a low rumble in the mountains, a darkening of the sky that turned the leaves silver as the wind picked up. We moved inside, the rain starting to lash against the windows in rhythmic sheets. The power flickered once, twice, and then died. The sudden absence of the refrigerator's hum made the house feel cavernous. Silas didn't miss a beat. He struck a match and lit the old hurricane lamps he kept on the mantel. The orange glow cast long, dancing shadows against the walls, softening the edges of the room. We sat at the kitchen table, the light between us flickering. I felt a sudden, sharp urge to be honest. The kind of honesty that only comes when you can't see the other person's face clearly. "Silas," I said, watching the flame, "do you ever regret it? Taking me in? Losing your quiet life?" He was silent for a long time. The rain hammered on the roof, a deafening, comforting roar. I started to regret asking, fearing I'd pushed too far, broken the fragile new peace we'd found. "Every day," he said, and my heart sank. But then he continued, "Every day I wake up and I'm grateful I didn't have to be alone with my own thoughts for 20 years. You didn't take my quiet life, Elena. You gave it a reason to have a voice. You were the best thing I never knew I wanted." He stood up and walked to an old built-in cabinet in the corner. He fumbled around in the back of a drawer and pulled out a small, leather-bound book. He laid it on the table between us. "I'm not a man for letters," he said, "but I've kept notes. Things I wanted to tell you but couldn't find the breath for. I figured I'd leave it for you in my will, but that seems like a waste of time now." I opened the book. It wasn't a diary. It was a list. Dates, mostly. October 12th. Elena learned to ride that bike. She didn't cry when she fell. She just looked at the sky and got back up. June 4th. She graduated middle school today. She looked like her mother in that blue dress. I wish I could tell her she's enough. August 20th. She's leaving for college tomorrow. The house is already too quiet. I felt the tears then, hot and stinging. They weren't sad tears. They were the kind that come when a heavy weight is finally lifted off your shoulders. All those years I'd felt like a burden, a guest in a house that didn't want me, and all that time, he had been documenting my life like it was the most precious thing he owned. I didn't know, I choked out. I know you didn't, he said, his hand resting briefly on my shoulder. That's on me. But now you do. The power stayed out for the rest of the night. We sat there in the lamplight, talking until the rain turned into a light drizzle and the frogs started their chorus in the woods. We talked about the future not as a scary, looming monster, but as a series of choices that I was allowed to make, and fail at, and make again. In the weeks that followed, I did find a job. It wasn't the dream career I'd imagined, but it was a start. I moved into a small apartment in the next town over, but I came back every Sunday for dinner. The silence is still there when I walk into Silas's house. It's part of the foundation, but it's a different kind of silence now. It's the silence of a house that is resting, not a house that is holding its breath. I've learned that people show love in the languages they know. For Silas, it was the levelness of a shelf and the sturdiness of a roof. For me, for a long time, it was being the perfect child so I wouldn't disturb his peace. We were both speaking different dialects of the same fear. But that one afternoon on the porch changed the frequency. It taught me that you can live with someone for 20 years and not truly see them until you're willing to be seen yourself. It taught me that proud of you is a powerful thing, but I see you is even more powerful. Life is still complicated. I still have days where I feel like I'm treading water, unsure of which way the shore is. But when those moments come, I think about the man in the weathered work shirt, sitting in a gray Adirondack chair waiting for me to just sit. I think about the fact that we are all carrying things quietly. We are all houses with rooms we've locked because we don't think anyone wants to see the dust inside. But sometimes, all it takes is one person to walk in, sit down, and tell us that the dust doesn't matter. The structure is sound. I hope you have someone in your life who sees you that way. And if you don't, I hope you can be that person for yourself. Because the silence only has as much power as we give it. Before I go, I want to leave you with a thought. Is there something you've been holding back from someone you love? A simple, I'm proud of you, or I see how hard you're trying. Maybe today is the day to break your own silence. You might be surprised at how much lighter the room feels afterward. Thank you for spending this time with me. It's been a privilege to share this memory with you. If this story resonated with you, please consider sharing it with someone who might need to hear it. Take care of yourselves and take care of each other. I'll see you in the next story.